There's a kind of silence that doesn't scare you anymore. The kind that feels like a soft breath after years of running. Most of us don't realize how loud our lives have become. The constant notifications, the endless conversations, the noise we carry inside. We mistake it for connection, but it's mostly distraction. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Maybe that's harder than ever today, when every spare moment gets filled with work emails, endless scrolling, the need to be seen, to respond, to keep up. We fear silence, not because it's empty, but because it reflects everything we try to outrun. And yet, somewhere between all that noise, there are moments when the world finally goes quiet, and for a second, it feels like time pauses. The air softens. Light drifts gently through the blinds. You notice your own breathing, slow, steady, alive. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounds almost sacred. That's where they found peace, not in success, not in noise, but in the quiet that once made them uncomfortable. It's strange, isn't it? How the same silence we used to avoid can later become the only place that feels like home. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you stopped running from the quiet? Sometimes, when you finally stop running, you start to hear what's been waiting beneath the noise. That's where the next part of the story begins. Not in peace, but in the struggle to face it. You know, silence wasn't always his friend. There was a time when it felt like a mirror, one that showed too much. Back then, the quiet pressed in. It echoed. It revealed things he didn't want to see, the exhaustion behind the smile, the ache buried under to-do lists. It was sharp, unkind, almost alive, and he ran from it. He'd turn the volume up, fill every empty second with sound, music, podcasts, the endless chatter of voices, anything to keep the quiet away. Because when it got quiet, things started to surface. The guilt of not being enough, the fear of wasting time, the loneliness that crept in after every long, busy day. And he wasn't alone in that. Most of us carry our own kind of noise. We wear it like armor. Distraction disguised as purpose. It keeps us from hearing the questions we're not ready to face. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But strength rarely feels like strength at first. It feels like standing still while the world rushes past. He'd sit in traffic, windows closed, radio humming. Outside, the city pulsed. Neon lights, horns, fragments of other lives. Inside, his chest tightened. He didn't know why silence made him feel small, only that it did. Maybe that's the weight we all carry. The noise isn't out there. It's in here. Then one night, after another day that felt just like the last, he drove home without music. At first, it was unbearable, but then something shifted. The hum of the tires, the rhythm of his breath, they began to sync. He didn't realize it then, but that was the sound of peace, finding its way back. So next time you reach for your phone in a quiet room, just stop for one breath. Ask yourself, what are you trying not to hear? Because maybe the silence you fear is the one that's been waiting to heal you. Grief, it has a strange way of bending time. Some days stretch endlessly, and others disappear before you can catch your breath. He didn't see it coming. The loss, the distance, the quiet goodbye that never really had words. It came slowly, almost gently, like rain that didn't want to stop. And when it did, everything was still. Too still. He'd wake up and lie there for a long time. The ceiling above him, blank, unmoving, almost felt like a mirror. Even the morning light seemed different, softer, almost like it knew what had happened. There's a moment after pain when you don't fight it anymore. You just breathe, not to fix it, not to escape it, just to survive the weight of it. That's where he was, sitting in silence. No distractions, just the ache and the quiet that held it. And in that quiet, something began to shift. He realized the silence wasn't empty at all. It was full of everything he'd been running from. The love that ended, the words he never said, the version of himself that he lost along the way. There were tears sometimes, not loud, just quiet ones that came without warning. And strangely, they didn't hurt as much as before. It was as if grief had softened, as if it finally trusted him to hold it without breaking. Seneca once said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." He understood that now, because healing isn't about erasing the pain. It's about sitting with it long enough for it to lose its sharp edges. Then, one morning, no reason, no plan, he felt a small shift. The coffee tasted right again. The air felt lighter. And when a song he used to avoid started playing, he didn't skip it. He just listened. Maybe that's what stillness really is. Not the absence of pain, but the space where pain slowly learns to rest. Because after every storm, there's a silence that doesn't feel like loss anymore. It feels like beginning. And when that beginning arrived, it didn't come with fanfare or sudden joy, just a quiet sense of returning to himself. That's where the silence began to change. No longer a shadow, but something familiar, almost kind. At first, the silence felt like an empty room. Now, it feels like a home he never knew he had. There's something almost sacred about the moment when you stop fearing your own company, when you can sit in a quiet room, no music, no voices, just the sound of your own breathing, and it doesn't feel lonely anymore. It feels peaceful. He started noticing small things again, the way sunlight moved across the floor in the afternoon, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the way steam curled from his coffee, then vanished into the air. Those tiny, ordinary things, they became reminders that life doesn't always need to be loud to be meaningful. He realized that silence was no longer demanding. It wasn't asking him to fix, to prove, to chase. It just offered space to think, to feel, to remember who he was before the noise. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Maybe that's what this silence was teaching him, that real freedom isn't out there somewhere. It's right here, in the calm acceptance of what is. There were still moments when the ache returned, memories, regrets, the pull of old habits. But now, he didn't run. He'd breathe through them, let them pass, like clouds moving through a quiet sky. And every time he did, the silence felt a little softer, a little kinder. He found comfort in simple rituals, watering the plants, writing thoughts that no one would read, watching the rain slide down the window. In those moments, the world seemed smaller, but somehow he felt larger, as if the quiet had expanded something inside him. And one evening, while walking home under the fading light, he caught himself smiling. Not because everything was perfect, but because he finally didn't need it to be. Silence, it turns out, was never the enemy. It was the friend waiting patiently for him to stop running. And in that friendship, he began to understand something deeper, that peace isn't found, it's remembered. Because sometimes, the moment you stop searching for calm is when it quietly finds you. It's strange how peace changes you. At first, it feels soft, gentle, almost fragile. But over time, you realize stillness carries its own quiet kind of strength. He noticed it one ordinary morning. A friend snapped at him over something small. A few months ago, he would have reacted, defended himself, maybe raised his voice. But this time, he just breathed, listened, and let it pass through him like wind moving through tall grass. No resistance, no storm, just space. That was new. That was strength. Not loud, not forceful, but grounded. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He'd read that line before, but only now did it truly make sense. Because peace wasn't weakness. It was clarity. It was the ability to stay calm in a world that constantly demands reaction. He started noticing how people rushed, always running, always needing to fill the silence, and he remembered being one of them. But when he stopped chasing, something inside him settled. The silence that once felt like absence had become presence, a quiet center he could return to any time. There were still bad days, days when the noise outside was loud again, when doubt crept in, whispering that maybe he hadn't changed at all. But even then, he knew how to pause, how to breathe, how to watch those thoughts drift by without becoming them. That's what stillness had given him. Not escape, but endurance. It wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about standing in it with grace. Sometimes he'd go for walks with no destination. Just feeling the rhythm of his steps, the cool air on his skin, the hum of life around him. And in those quiet walks, he felt a strength that words couldn't explain. Not the kind that conquers, but the kind that remains. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." And maybe that's true for peace too. It's not a switch you turn on. It's a muscle you build, breath by breath, moment by moment. Because once you find that stillness within you, the world can shake, but it can't move you. And in that steadiness, something new begins to grow. Not just peace, but purpose. And perhaps that purpose doesn't announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly, almost unnoticed, like the next chapter of a story that doesn't need an ending, only continuation. Because when stillness matures, it doesn't stop at calm. It begins to shape how you live. And maybe that's where it all leads, not to a finish line, but to a quieter kind of beginning. He never woke up and thought, "I'm healed." There wasn't a single moment that felt like arrival. It just happened slowly, like morning light slipping through the curtains, soft, unnoticed, but undeniably there. He realized he no longer needed silence to find peace, because the silence had become part of him. It followed him into noise, into conversations, into the ordinary rhythm of living. There were still long days, still the ache of being human. But something was different now. The noise of the world no longer pulled him under. He could meet frustration with calm, uncertainty with patience, and pain with a kind of quiet understanding. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And maybe that's what this all was, not an escape, but a practice of seeing clearly, of meeting life as it is, without demanding it to be more. He found meaning not in grand gestures, but in the quiet things, listening fully when someone spoke, choosing gentleness when anger would have been easier, pausing before reacting. There's a quiet power in that kind of living, a strength that doesn't shout, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. Maybe that's the real purpose of stillness, not to retreat from life, but to return to it more present, more aware, more kind. And perhaps, somewhere within you, there's also a quiet place waiting to be remembered, a space where you meet yourself without noise or masks, just you as you are. If you found that space, what would you say to yourself there? And maybe that's all any of us are really doing, learning to return to this moment, to ourselves, again and again. Because peace has never been a destination. It's a way of moving through life. The quiet strength behind each breath, the calm beneath every uncertainty. It's the soft courage to stay gentle, even when the world forgets how. If you're still here, listening, perhaps this story found a quiet corner of you that's been waiting to be seen. So before you go, just pause. Inhale. Notice the silence between the sounds. Notice what stays. Notice what softens. And when you're ready, return to your own stillness. Ask yourself, what truth in me has been waiting to be heard? Because sometimes the next chapter isn't something you search for. It's something you slowly remember when the noise fades and you finally listen.